Alright, everyone. Hello and welcome back to the Watching Walford channel. Today we have a not nearly as chipper video as we normally do, as today on the I believe it was dropped on the 15th of February 2023. It was as I first saw this news report on Digital Spy as they announced a new major storyline, which is issue based. I know most people complain about it, but it is going to be a issue based storyline that is going to confront non-consensual sex. Basically, the character who is going to have to deal with unconsensual sex is Amy Barlow, and the perpetrator is going to be Aaron Sanford. So let's just set the scene, and let's just establish who the characters are before we get into the details of what has been reported. So Amy Barlow is the child of Tracy and Steve. Tracy Barlow, Steve McDonald. Two very famous and popular characters on the Cobbles. But ultimately, they are together. They've raised Amy fairly well, fairly strong, fairly respectable, and they've given Amy the platform to make her own decisions smartly and just be a proud and confident woman. Her storylines in the last couple of years, as she went from like young kid to teen, there was a baby with Tyler Jeffries that ended up getting aborted. She did not feel the want to have this child. I believe at the time Tracy and Steve were like, yeah, we'll raise the kid for you. And it's like, no, sorry, that's not happening. And the other main storyline she had till now was her relationship with Jacob Hay, a former drug dealer who became reformed, and a lot of his redemption came when Amy and Jacob got together, as there was a lot of legwork trying to allow people to accept and go, okay, Jacob is a reformed character, he loves me, and we want to be together. And this is what led them to now be in their current living situation, where Amy and Jacob and Summer and Aaron, the other character in the story, all now live together. What has Aaron been doing till now? Well, Aaron has been brought in to essentially be Summer's boyfriend. He's a mechanic on the Cobbles. He works with Kevin and Tyrone at the garage, but also has been struggling to help his alcoholic yet abusive father, and has had to kind of deal with all of this, along with the summer of Summer, where instead of going to uni, she found out she had diabetes, tried to cheat on her test despite being like the A-star student, gonna go to Oxford. All the pressure got to her. She had an eating disorder. But they met through the diabetes support group, as they were both struggling. But they got together. They ended up booking a holiday, etc. And they ended up having sex, and they made a child. Except instead of raising the child as they intended to, they met these two people called Mike and Esther, who they were going to sell the baby to in a weird surrogacy, but not surrogacy, as they wanted a reason to pay for Aaron's dad's rehab. Aaron and Summer have been a fairly strong couple, and we've seen very positive sides to Aaron. And obviously now they all live together, as we mentioned before. But the main issue right now is that it's not really been a good year so far for Amy Barlow, as earlier in the year, Jacob's dad, Damon, came back, and Damon essentially showed his true colours and was essentially, Jacob, you either help me deal with these drugs, or you're gone. And he tied him up in knots. Damon made sure that Jacob was not going to be able to stick around on the cobbles, and to try and save Amy's feelings in the long run, Jacob decided he was going to act as if he had fallen off again, he was selling drugs again, and it was all her fault, which he felt was the best thing to do at the time. So it's obviously not been a good year for Amy. And as the article says, and scenes airing on March the 3rd, a drunk Amy and Aaron head back to their flat following Aaron's heated argument with his girlfriend Summer. The two soon start kissing and move to the bedroom, where Amy begins to undress, before revealing that she feels sick and rolls away from him. Aaron, on the other hand, continues to kiss Amy and decides for her that they will have sex. It's not until the next day that Amy learns how far things went and realizes that she was unable to consent and therefore was raped by Aaron, who tries to convince her that they both wanted it to happen. As family, friends, and the police get involved, viewers will see the different reactions and understandings of non-consensual sex as both teens struggle to deal with what happened that night. Coronation Street hopes this narrative will spark conversations between families, friends, and essentially regarding the issues surrounding sex among young people, like consent, awareness, respect, and just the general education of it all. They're working with a charity to make sure people know what consent is, and otherwise they've essentially mentioned there will be many different viewpoints from the characters. And that also, despite the fact that she may not say she does not consent, it is very clearly shown that she did not consent. And they also made sure to essentially, in the run-up to the episode, they didn't want to change how they would normally act, but the characters were getting closer. Although this does not mean that it's okay for him to decide that they're going to have sex if she didn't consent. And it's about establishing that grey area that nobody's owed anything. If they don't consent, they don't consent. It's not like a get in a huff, god damn it, why you like this. It's okay, they can't consent. They're not, like, this is not happening. The message needs to be clear. And they then wrote that it's not going to end here, and this will be a long-term, this will be a big deal for Amy, and she will be dealing with it for a very long time. And it will affect her mental health and well-being going forward, which was a key thing that they wanted to achieve in the story. So, with that being said, I do truly wonder how they are going to deal with this storyline. And I felt like I needed to at least talk about it, to at least get my initial trepidation off my chest. See, the difference between this and the usual storylines where a character is raped or a character is sexually assaulted is that usually the character who commits the crime is usually brought in just for it, take the Lewis Butler, Ben Mitchell storyline, where Lewis was introduced, yeah, sure, a couple months before, but ultimately he was there to serve a purpose. But Aaron's been here for at least a year, perhaps 2 at this point. He's a slightly more established character on the square. He's in a relationship with Summer, who has been one of the more prominently featured characters. I keep saying the square. I mean the cobbles. I'm too used to talking about EastEnders, and I'm not used to talking about Coronation Street on the channel. So, you know, he is a more established character on the cobbles. He works with Kevin and Ty. You know, he's friendly with Billy, Todd, and Paul, and has been there all the time supporting Summer, even when she was going to give up a baby that he actually wanted. And he's been shown to be a caring and supportive guy. So it's going to be interesting to see how they portray the... not the assault. It's going to be interesting as to how they portray the aftermath of the assault. Is it going to be no, we were both drunk, and he's going to try convince himself that it was all perfectly fine, and that, like, he wouldn't do that because, you know, he respects everyone. He would never do something as horrible as that. Are they going to suddenly make him this big bad villain, where he's gonna spiral out of control and try to gaslight Amy into not saying anything? Or is it going to be a character who realizes that they've made a mistake, and they will make sure to try, like, educate themselves and kind of realize that she didn't consent? Doesn't matter if she started undressing. Doesn't matter if you were making out and you led each other to the bedroom. She could not have consented. And even if people don't say the words, there should always be that awareness as to whether or not it would be okay to actually... Because obviously the idea is that nobody, whether any reasonable and respectful individual, will know when the point of... If you are, like, taking any substances, if you're drinking, if you're doing drugs, any respectable individual will be able to realize the point of no return. Which sounds really crude, but it's the idea that there will be a point where you go, they could not give informed consent, you know, like, they are way too out of it to make any decision. And obviously the main thing is, how is it going to affect Amy? Because Amy's, as I mentioned before, she's been such a strong character of the square. She's not really had to deal with that much heartbreak, and she had a fairly cushy existence on the cobbles. And especially after her I'd say first love, Jacob, abandoning her, and now being assaulted by who she thought was just a good friend. How will this affect her in the long term? I just think it's a really complex story, and as much as I would never say I'm excited for a storyline like this, because it's gonna be rough, it's gonna be upsetting, it's gonna be harrowing, it's gonna be painful, it's gonna hurt, because they've taken a character that we love. Amy Barlow is a great character, and has always been a great character, and has stood out I mean, I may be exaggerating a bit, but I doubt she's on anybody's least favorite character list. And you take Aaron, who fundamentally, on his time on the cobbles, has been nothing but supportive. And now we're set to believe that he would do something so unforgivable. And it's going to be interesting to see how they play that off. And like I said, whether he proceeds to turn into Big Bad, yeah, that was your fault. Or whether he goes, oh my god, I can't believe I'd even do that to anyone. Or whether it kind of just gets a bit seedier. And it also notes that we're going to see different viewpoints about it. So, you know, are we going to see that Amy realizes retroactively that that was rape? But is Aaron just going to be thinking from the, like, blackout drunk brain, like, no, we were both happily into this? Let's say Summer chooses her boyfriend's side over Amy's. Is Amy going to get called out for lying? Is it going to get turned that because she's so hurt by Jacob, she'll try spin something because Summer's happy? And, you know, maybe Aaron's dad starts throwing accusations around like, oh, it was you actually. It was you who did it. You know, and all these different attitudes towards consent and unconsensual sex are going to arise to the surface. And I have good faith that the Coronation Street writers, Coronation Street actors, and all of the producers and people working behind the scenes will handle this with the complexity and the attention that such an important and big storyline deserves. As I suggested, it's gonna be a really, really rough one. But it's a good story to tell, and it's a very important social issue. Because ultimately, consent to some is a grey area. Some people don't even really care for the notion of consent. And that's completely unforgivable. Knowing people who have suffered sexual assaults and just horrific things at the hands of other people who decided that they wanted this and didn't give the other person a choice, it leaves such a huge impact on the person. Like how disgusted you'd feel, and how small, how you were taken, your control was completely taken away, and you couldn't do anything to stop that. It's a feeling that I'd imagine would either take many years to find again, or at least is something you just build around and it never really goes away. So, just in case anybody who's watched this just kind of worried about this topic, this commences on March the 3rd and is going to be the stage is going to be set around that night. I just felt it was important to discuss such an important topic. And honestly, I couldn't sleep not having given myself the time to express all of my thoughts about it. I hope I'm not speaking from some clouded completely incorrect worldview, and I hope that if anybody has watched this and has any of their own opinions on the topic, or just the general idea of what do you think about the social issues, because I feel like there's a lot to be learned, and at this point in time, it's a very good time to put a lot more emphasis on what consent actually means, and the awareness of, like, someone actually consenting. Regardless, I've been watching Walford, a slightly different topic this time. I've been Ash, and join us next time.